Here's another interesting development. I don't know if you're familiar with the game Dead Space, which I've seen and played the first part. It's a horror type third person game. So according to TechRadar.com, the Dead Space game is going to have a remake, release date, trailer, and platforms that's going to be showcased, and everything that we need to know. So we'll take a closer look at that one. So for those who are familiar with the Dead Space, it's similar to how Resident Evil works, but it's in space, and rather than first person, it's a third person experience. Similar how the original, what do you call this? Resident Evil started with the Resident Evil 2 and Codename Veronica and 3. Anyway, my question is, my apprehension is, should they make a remake of the popular game? Now, excuse me. Even though the first game did well, but upon releasing the sequel and the third one, it did poorly and even bombed. So I don't know what's the goal of EA here, trying to recapture the glory here. But the question here is, will the game be the same as before, what made it successful, or will just make a game that is, that would appeal to a masses, but that would disrespect the gamers who followed it from the very beginning? Because at the end of the day, if you want to sell a lot of games, you have to appeal not just to a majority, not just a majority, to a casual gamer, but to those who actually supported your game in the first place. And according to them, they want to heighten the levels of immersion here by using the latest engine as mentioned, the Frostbite engine as mentioned. But we'll see, right? And what's concerning here, they stated that they want to improve the game story. I mean, yeah, the story is important, but at the end of the day, it's all about the gameplay, right? The concept of, you have to cut off their limbs, those necromorphs. So that's a innovative way of gameplay. Try to make it interesting. If it's an immersion like a horror genre, similar to how Alien Isolation works, that's a great experience, even if a short one. So it's not perfect, but at least it gives you that immersion, so to speak, like how you watch it in the films, right? And what's interesting here, according to the producer of Dead Space, Philip Ducharme, he mentions that the Dead Space franchise had huge impact. Yeah, it had a huge impact in the survivor horror, but they changed their theme into a more a action third person shooter rather than focus on the horror genre, which is kind of disappointing here. Question is, will they follow the same path, or will they change the narrative here? And according to them, they mentioned that as we look to modernize the game, and that's the scary part. How will you modernize the game now? Unless you try to make it more aesthetically more appropriate for the present, but changing the details of the gameplay mechanics, what made them popular in the first place, we have to wait and see. Anyway, they say that they've reached out to dedicated fans and invited them to provide us with feedback since the early stage of the production to deliver the Dead Space game that they want. We have to wait and see, because they could all say all the right things right now. At the end of the day, don't pre-order games anymore. Wait for the reviews to come in, and wait and then see if the games that they promise to sell, or to for you to play, like Cyberpunk 2077. I think that's a lesson that everyone needs to understand, that never trust a company on their word alone. Let their actions speak for themselves, because if a company takes advantage of of our good relationship, they will take advantage. And it only takes one mistake to destroy that image, which what CD Projekt Red did. So question is, will other companies learn from that lesson, like EA, even Activision, who's been in hot water recently? Anyway, as mentioned, so the Dead Space 3 uh, did flop in retail. So meaning the direction of what the company wanted for that game was not, meaning they didn't listen with the gamers here, because what made the first one successful did not translate into the succeeding or sequels there. They should have maintained that immersion of, you know, the horrific experience being in a space by yourself, and then you have to deal with those necromorphs here. Anyway, maybe it's a way for EA to replicate what Capcom is doing with the Resident Evil franchise here. So at the end of the day, question is, what type of a game will Dead Space be? Will it be a first-person shooter, or will it be a survival horror game here? I tend to prefer the survival horror mixed with a little bit of shooting, because they have the Mass Effect series. If they want a good storytelling with with action on as a secondary, not the primary, that's another game that, you know, that is another separate discussion altogether.